Director for the Diverse Elders Coalition. Lauren?
Thank you so much, Angie. Good morning, everyone. I'm over here on the West Coast, so it's still morning here. It's my pleasure to be joining you today in the National Caucus and Center on Black Aging to talk about emotional well-being through a difficult time, which is currently the pandemic. I know we've all been hearing about it a lot, but it's our pleasure really to be here with NCBA and to hear from a lot of experts about how to support each other and how to support ourselves through this difficult time. I do also want to make sure to acknowledge the National Alliance for Caregiving, who has helped support producing this webinar, as well as the Johnny Hartford Foundation for their generous support, both for this webinar and for the Diverse Elders Coalition as a group for all of our work in the caregiving space. Caregivers are really close to our hearts and to all of our partners. Y'all are what make, keep our community uplifted. So thank you for all that you do. And I will turn it back to Keisha to get us started today and move into some of the polls, but really grateful to be able to be here with all of you.
Now we will launch our first poll related to caregiving. You will have 30 seconds to respond to each question. The first question is, are you currently providing care to a loved one or friend? The next question is, has the person you provide care to been hospitalized or placed in a long-term care facility during the pandemic? And the third question I'll be asking is, if the person you provide care to was hospitalized or placed in a long-term care facility during the pandemic, were you able to visit them? I'm now going to launch the poll. Please answer the questions. Participants, can you please answer the questions? Thank you. There they go. And thank you for sharing your feedback to everyone that's on the call. You will have 30 seconds to continue to answer your questions. The poll is now ending. Thank you all. So next we'll move into our session. So COVID-19 has impacted every aspect of our lives over the past 11 months, and caregiving has been no different. Caregivers have been expected to continue their role providing care for their loved ones, navigating healthcare appointments and home care visits. You may have been told you could not visit your loved ones while they were in the hospital or the nursing home. You have feared exposing your loved ones to COVID-19. This has been a very difficult time. As a healthcare worker myself, I'm often labeled as an essential worker. The work I do every day impacts the lives of others and teaches them how to gain independence and return home to their loved ones. The healthcare system prioritized stopping the spread of COVID above everything else, ensuring that their patients and that the staff were safe. But as a person who often provides care for my grandmother, this has been devastating, and some of us have been faced with some difficult decisions. As caregivers, you know their medical history, their behaviors, their likes, their dislikes. You know how to provide the best communication for them. You too are essential. Now, I would be remiss if I did not note that since the start of the pandemic, many organizations, including many healthcare facilities, have rallied around caregivers and have made changes to some of their visitation policies. However, the early impact has caused trauma and pain, anxiety and fear. So the emotional impact of caregiving is not always addressed. So today, that's what we hope to do. Today, we welcome a group of caregivers and we welcome expert panelists who are going to help us today to talk about the impact of caregiving and COVID. The first person that we have speaking today is Ms. Elaine Hardy. Ms. Hardy currently serves as the Human Resources Director of the Charlotte Hall Veterans Home with the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs. Ms. Hardy is no stranger to long-term caregiving and elder care in the community. And she has served as a caregiver. She has served, in that industry for over 25 years. We will now hear from Ms. Hardy. Ms. Hardy.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, fellow caregivers, panelists, and NCBA coordinating committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay, good. My name is Elaine Hardy, and I am a caregiver. I'm excited to be a caregiver. I've been a caregiver for my mom, who is 86 years old, and my 30-year-old son. I am what you refer to as a sandwich caregiver because I've been caring for my son since he was 9 years old. I've been a caregiver for my mom since 2005, which is approximately 16 years now that she's been with me. I also was a caregiver for my mother-in-law 6 years prior to her passing in 2012. My mom was an undiagnosed and untreated mental health patient for all of my life until I entered into full custodial care of my mom in 2005. The physical and cognitive dysfunctions that became more persistent in my mom's care in her late 70s. Caregiving for me is a lonesome task. I am an only child, and therefore all decisions regarding my mom's care are solely up to me. From the inception, when I had to make a decision to move my mom out of her apartment after over 40 years of being in that particular residence and space, and move her into my new home I just built. So you can imagine how that made me feel, because I wasn't prepared to move her into my home. And I also had to coerce her into retiring after 72 years. I'm at the age of 72 years, when she believed that she could still perform at her optimum, and that just wasn't happening. Her employer was very grateful that I did the job for them, which was moving her out of our house, out of her employment. Caregiving for me was having to leave my job after 14 years to take lower wages and assignments closer to home to be available for my mom during emergent situations. Caregiving was watching my peer group travel and enjoy their normal progressive lives while I just seemed to be home and always begging folk for respite care, which kind of never happened as being an only child. The greatest challenge in my caregiving experience was resisting guilt, anger, depression, and resentment. These emotions haunted me daily because I always felt so cheated. How has caregiving changed for me? As mentioned previously, I have been in a caregiving mode for a lifetime. The pandemic intensified the dynamics of caregiving because I was experiencing my mom's hospitalization for the first time in 15 years. My mom had 2 strokes in January of 2020. She was in a coma for almost a week in ICU, right around the time when we started hearing whispers about this deadly virus. She was transferred to a rehab facility on January 31st, 2020, and we tried to establish some sort of normalcy on how caregiving will look from a co-management perspective with the institution. The facility was 15 minutes from my home and my job, so that was great, so I thought. I quickly created a regimen where I stopped by every day to feed my mom for dinner, bathe her, and have her aide assist me in dressing her for bed. It was perfect. I felt so supported for the first time in my caregiving experience. And the most thing was I felt like she was actually safe. Within a few weeks, all this would change again. The governor of Maryland issued an executive order banning all nursing home visitations, and my last day of physically seeing or touching my mom would be February 29th, 2020. It has been 353 days since I've kissed, hugged, or gazed in my mom's eyes. Sorry. The unmanageable stress that I have felt trying to navigate from having her with me for the last 16 years around the clock to not seeing her at all for an entire year has taken a complete toll on my life. How has this affected her? Likewise, my mom has been ultimately affected by this drastic change in her care. She feared being placed in long-term care and always made me promise that I would not make such a decision. I watched my mom and her siblings provide caregiving for my grandmother until she passed at 92 years old. So I knew my mom would not be happy when she finally came around and understood her current situation. Shortly after the banning of visitation, my mom was transferred to long-term care within that same facility. This transfer removed her from a private room setting to a semi-private room setting. Within 3 weeks of her transfer, my mom was diagnosed with COVID and did over 85 residents within that facility. Over 50 residents died, and this particular facility received major local and national news coverage for their lack of mitigation practices. It was horrible. Now, my mom, who just fought 2 strokes, was diagnosed with COVID and pneumonia. As a long-term care employee myself, I knew all the right things to request from my mom's institutional caregivers. I remained an active advocate for her care and demanded updates daily. I knew that if I built a rapport with her care team, I would have a chance to better outcomes for her survival. The strategy worked, and my mom made a remarkable recovery cognitively. Physically, she will probably not be able to walk independently again. She has experienced periods of severe depression, loneliness, and abandonment. What was my biggest frustration during this pandemic? Obviously, the detachment from my mom's physical presence and relying on others to give her the quality of care that I would is my greatest frustration. Secondly, would be the challenge in the facility not having enough options to help connect loved ones to residents virtually. I would set up a Zoom or FaceTime appointments with activities department only to be disappointed because they didn't have enough staff or iPads to fulfill the appointment. My emotional well-being during this pandemic has also been affected. It's pretty much been non-existent. I've had an increased anxiety and depression. I've had increased anxiety and depression that at times felt so overwhelming, I needed to seek medical treatment. Not to mention that I am menopausal and therefore experiencing dual hormone imbalances. Thank you for allowing me to share my story this afternoon.
Elaine, thank you for sharing. I think that is what you shared today is what many of us as caregivers experience. So we appreciate your story and we appreciate you being very personal and honest with us. Thank you. So now we'll move to our next panelist. Our next panelist is Dr. Ebony Green. Dr. Green is the president and CEO of Caregiver Support Services. She is a registered nurse and family caregiver with extensive experience on the health and wellness of caregivers. She is the author of 3 books, At the Heart of the Matter, Caregiving in the New Millennium, and Reflections from the Soul. Dr. Green works with caregiving communities to teach the importance of self-care while caregiving for someone you love. Dr. Green, I will now bring up your presentation. Please give me just a moment. Dr. Green.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I'm very moved by Elaine's personal experience. I too am an only daughter and have had family members that my favorite aunt had schizophrenia. And so I'm very, very moved by your experience and wish I was talking more about the emotional aspect, but here I'm going to try to talk a little bit about what we can do and how we can advocate for ourselves and our loved ones in long-term care organizations or making that communication and connection. I do want to thank the NCBA, the Diverse Elders Coalition, and the National Alliance for having me today. And I'm very honored to have this opportunity to speak with you.
Dr. Let me know when you want me to advance the slide.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. So just a little teeny bit about Caregiver Support Services. We are a nonprofit organization and we do focus on family and frontline caregivers. Many of us are in the dual role where we're working in healthcare and we're also caring for family members. My husband and I have found ourselves in that situation more than once, and we're now caregivers for his grandmother. Fortunately, she's at home. So, you know, we've had to decrease the number of folks who can go over and visit her. And that's been really challenging. But my father and his brother are experiencing the challenges associated with visiting a loved one in a long-term care facility. So my tips include, number one, remembering that whether or not we are designated as essential, family caregivers are essential. The other concern, or the other second idea here, is that we want to learn as much as possible about the facility policies. And you also want to think about what you want to do or how you'll approach things if your organization does or your loved one's facility does allow visits. You'll also want to consider joining an advocacy group and then contacting your long-term care ombudsman. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. My slides seem to be doing something really interesting. So I'm just going to keep going. And I also have a handout that I can send so you can get this content. So as a family caregiver, you are essential regardless of whether or not you get the designation. And what that means is that in some states now, they are recognizing family members who participate in the daily care of a loved one as an essential caregiver, which means they can still visit. And what that means is that you would be providing daily care. Maybe you're someone who assist your family member with their bath, or you assist with meals, that type of thing. So we are looking at being able to be considered essential caregivers in some states. The goal is recognizing that essential caregivers are essential to the care, but I think that part of what we're missing in a lot of situations is that it's not necessarily just the care. It's like Elaine said, it's the emotional attachment. And even though you're maybe able to use, Zoom or iPad for communication, it does not replace the human touch aspect. And so we're all concerned about how not being able to actually physically be near our loved ones, how that may impact their social well-being, and then their overall health. So the goal of recognizing essential caregivers is to bring loved ones together with family members who are unintentionally caught in the middle of policies that are meant to protect them. My father and his brother have not seen each other physically since the pandemic started. My dad has lupus, and my uncle, he has special needs, has always had special needs, and is in a longer term care facility now that he also has complicating medical conditions. And so it's very hard for both of them and family members who would normally go and visit my uncle. Okay, the next slide, please. So one of the considerations is that policies are going to differ from state to state. And so that can be really challenging for individuals who want to visit their family members. So we don't have a blanket approach as to what we can say will work for you in your situation. So we really want to determine whether the facility has an essential caregiver policy and find out what the procedures are. If the facility does not have a policy for essential caregivers, we want to see if the state has a policy. And then if you're unable to locate anything in your state, then maybe you might be a change advocate to advocate with others for ensuring that other family members, including yourself, are considered essential. We also want to learn as much as possible about the facility policies. So as for facilities, a caregiver should expect that we're going to be following CDC guidelines. So, the gloving and hand washing and masking, and especially when we're talking about more vulnerable adults. We're also going to ensure that as facilities, that included in the guidelines is what organizations will follow and alternate ways for you to communicate. Now, as Elaine mentioned, this doesn't always work, especially if you have staff that are, they're sick, the residents are sick, and then you're not having enough support staff to basically make sure that the connections are made. That can be devastating. Video calls are a way to connect with loved ones visually, even if the facility is not equipped. The last time my dad called, this was really kind of funny to me. He called me on my phone, and he called in the video chat. And he's never done that before. So, that's kind of taught him a little bit about the using electronics and being able to see each other, even because he has lupus. So I can't go visit him. If it's permissible, there could be other arrangements. Right now it's freezing. So it's not like you could go, outdoors and see your loved one from windows and things like that we've seen maybe in the news. So if your facility does allow you to visit, you want to be prepared to go through screening. And I think we all are advocates of that we would want to be tested for COVID. We don't want other vulnerable adults to be impacted by us bringing in something. So that's important. And then of course, wearing a mask. And if they have other protective equipment, we want to use that. We know that at the beginning of the COVID crisis, we did see that there was a lot of times PPE was in short supply, but I saw some of my fellow panelists wearing their masks and stuff even today as we were preparing for our conversation. So we all know that that's important. We want to make sure that the nursing home or hospital provides you with regular updates. I was hearing Elaine mentioning that in her personal experience. So you can be up to date on what they're doing to keep your loved one protected. And then getting the COVID vaccine. I know that we have some concerns and things about vaccines in our community, but grandma that we're caring for, she finally got her first vaccine. There's hope there because we really want to all be able to spend time with her. Right now, my husband is the only primary caregiver that's going in and visiting her at home. Another consideration is to join an advocacy group. And as I mentioned, I can send over the article that has the hyperlinks in it that can be used, because there's a great group called Caregivers for Compromise. And what they're doing is having communications about families that are not able to visit their loved ones in long-term care, and how they can actually advocate things that have actually worked in their communities. And so learning from others and getting blueprints is always very helpful. So it's a nice open group of individuals that have loved ones in long-term care facilities. The other thing that sometimes we don't think about immediately is contacting the long-term care ombudsman. So if all else fails, you're not getting anywhere with the long-term care organization. Most folks working in long-term care, I've been an administrator myself, we're in it because we love the people, we love the residents, we love the staff. But if you when you're distressed, you just never know what kind of a response you're going to get. So each state has a long-term care ombudsman. And again, in the article that I can send over, there's a hyperlink for all 50 states. And they are primarily, their goal is to protect the rights of individuals residing in long-term care organizations and facilities. So if you find you're having trouble resolving issues related to being able to see your loved one, then you really want to reach out to them, because they can help you navigate and possibly identify resources and strategies that you might not have necessarily be aware of. In addition to their advocacy work, your state long-term care ombudsman also provides education. They promote the development of family councils. This is an opportunity, if you are a strong advocate of your loved one in a facility, why not be a part of their the facility's family council, so that you can impact and advocate for others in addition to your loved one. And then they also help resolve complaints. So every state has one. They're usually for so many states. What I mean by that is usually like your area agency on aging has so many counties that they support, and the long-term care ombudsman usually goes along with that, hand in hand. So those are a few tips that I have for visiting, and I'm very, very thankful for having the opportunity to just share with you, and also to listen and learn from the folks on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you, Dr. Green, and thank you, Elaine, for giving us that information, providing us more insight on what it means to be a caregiver and identify support services during COVID-19. So now we will launch our second poll, and you will have 30 seconds to respond to each question. I wanted to let everyone know that all polls are anonymous, so we will not know who answered the polls, but we would appreciate your feedback and your response. So the second poll will now launch, and then we'll move into part 2 of our session. So I'm now launching poll 2. And you will have 30 seconds to answer each question. You can answer the questions by just clicking on your screen. We will have about 30 more seconds to answer the question. I'll give us about another 20 seconds. We will have just a few more minutes to answer the questions in the poll. The poll will now close. Thank you everyone for participating. Now, we will move on to the second part of our session, which is to discuss more of the emotional aspect of caregiving and coping. So we all have become familiar with the words social distancing, self-isolation, and quarantine. Caregivers cannot socially distance or isolate often. Caregiving is a 24/7, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. I was listening to a sermon a few weeks ago, and it was the Reverend Dr. John Wesley that stated, "There's safety in social distancing and danger in isolation." My mind immediately was directed to all of those providing care for someone during this pandemic. As caregivers, we are often tired, mentally, emotionally, and physically. We have prayed, we've cried, we have yelled out in frustration because there was nothing that could have prepared us for this journey over these last 11 months. Next, we will hear from Ms. Sharon Conway, caregiver, and Ms. Janice Petty, who is a licensed mental health therapist, who will help us learn more about emotional well-being during difficult times. Mrs. Conway, that I'm going to spotlight now, has been a caregiver for 16 different family members over the last 35 years. They have ranged in ages from 3 to 98. She currently is a long-distance caregiver for her mother, who lives in an assisted living facility. She retired after 33 years working in the Prince George's County public school system. She is a resident of Beltsville, Maryland, and currently resides in Polk City, Florida. Sharon says that she's fleeing the virus and the cold weather. So Ms. Sharon, we'll hear from you next. You can go forward.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. My presence today, I was the second choice. My sister was the first choice, but true to our collaboration and our caregiving with our mother, she was not able to do this because of something she was doing with our mother. And so I stepped up. I couldn't tell her no, especially since I'm down here in Florida and she's up there with y'all in the cold. So I had to say yes. I am a long distance caregiver for my mother, and my sister resides in in Marbury, Maryland. Our mother is in a long-term care facility. It's an assisted living facility in Waldorf. And we do share caregiving. Thank God. I don't know how you all who are only children, I don't know how you do it. I don't. And we barely make it with the two of us, but it has taken a lot of cooperation. It's not impossible with just one person, as you know, but it can be very taxing. My sister is an educational consultant, and because of that, she's not able to travel as freely as I can. I have no job, and my husband is also retired, and so we have the ability to travel at will. I've been a caregiver for my husband since 2005. He lost his arm in a motorcycle accident at that time. And my husband was my caregiver during our marriage, following each of more than 30 surgeries that I had. I now have a chance to show him how much I appreciate him for my care and also how much I love him. Some people don't realize that a caregiver is more than just someone who comes by, you know, that's a professional or semi-professional. A caregiver is someone who is a paid or unpaid person in the social network. Your mom, your grandmother, your auntie, and since there's no requirement for professional care training, then very often the care that our loved ones get can it's very widely. So we have to be very careful who we allow into our home or where we leave our loved one. We make a promise, and I heard that promise alluded to by Elaine, that we made to our grandparents and parents not to place them in a nursing home. And I also, I gave that same promise, and I probably made that promise before Elaine was even born. But anyway, I knew, and especially as a Black person, it had a different ring for us because it impacted the Black family for a generation because we did not have access to quality long-term care except for the nursing home option. Assisted living facilities and in-home care are generally a much better quality caregiving option. I say generally, not always. However, the cost can be prohibitive to the average middle-class family. We spent about $130,000 to $140,000 per year for each of the years that our parents were in having long-term care. Thankfully, they had insurance. The care that they had, the insurance covered them in home or in an assisted living residence, meaning that we had the option of actually having round the clock or part-time care in our home. They lived with me for about 6 weeks, and this is before we realized that we thought that they needed to go to assisted living, and they resisted it. And so my father actually wanted to go because he realized he wasn't getting the best care from my mother. They were in Virginia, so we'd been doing long-term care for a long time. And it was after one Thanksgiving when it was, the weather was really bad, the traffic was bad, it was Thanksgiving Eve, and my dad got sick, and we could not physically get to Luray to help take him to another hospital or something like that, and we were trapped. It was at that point we started telling them, you need to come up here. We can't go down there, but you need to come up with us. It took us almost 10 years for them to finally move to my home. And they were with me for 6 weeks. And I thought I would lose my mind. Elaine, I bless your heart, honey. I could not take it. And so I knew my parents had this insurance, but my mother did not want to go. And so I called my sister and told her I didn't know where they were going to go, but they had to leave my house. I couldn't do it anymore. And it wasn't, my dad he's been sweet as honey, but my mother but she's always been that way. And a lot of us see this, parents, if they were nasty when you were little, they're gonna be even nastier when they get old because they lose all inhibitions. Dad was always sweet and thoughtful and kind, and you just want to hug him and kiss him. And he got more so as he got older. My mother, well, just pray for her. Anyhow, my father has since gone to be with the Lord. I'm so thankful he does not have to go through all this right here. He would have died from this without the COVID because he was a touchy-feely. He liked to feel and hug and stuff. My mother has always been a loner. And so she has been affected, but not quite as much as my dad would have been. And she's happy to be in her room to herself and bossing everybody else around her. So she's kind of all right. The bottom line for us is that we need to free ourselves of the guilt of the promise that we made to our parents. And I made mine about 50 years ago. And now the question I ask is, am I providing the absolute best care for my loved one without sacrificing my health and well-being? If the answer is no, we have an obligation to begin our research for quality in-home or assisted living residential care. If our health fails, because we are the primary caregiver and not getting the help we need. Few, if any other family members will give your loved one the care they need. If they are not giving it now, if they're not stepping up, they surely will not step up after you are not able to do so. So you have got to take care of yourself first. And I know it is guilt, honey. It was a lot of guilt until Elaine, again, I don't know how you're doing it, honey, but you know, bless your heart that and my sister has your guilt. And even now, even after we had to put our mother back in assisted living, she actually moved out back into my sister's home to try to save money. But my mother was very cantankerous, and she a little on the mean side. I'm sorry, mommy. And she called the police on my sister. She told them that she was stranded in the house and couldn't get out. She was being left alone. It wasn't true. And I told my sister, I said, if you don't get her out of there, you're going to end up in jail. And who's going to take care of her then? I said, because I can't step up to this. And so finally, after she did call the police and the fire department on my sister, they moved her back into the assisted living. The 16 people I cared for, my grandmother, and when she had leg amputation, and my mother was actually taking care of her, but we realized that my mother was not able to do for her the way she should have, because she was trying to lift her and move her and stuff like that, and it was taking a toll on her health. And my mother had also made the promise to grandma. Then my aunt was elderly and had dementia. I took care of her for 20 years. She died in 2009, and she was 96 years old, but she was in assisted living, and we came out of pocket to pay for her. Father died in 2019. He had dementia, but I realized there are over 100 different kinds of dementia. And my father had the kind that made you sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. That's the kind I want. And but he died 2 years ago. My mother has dementia. She's 96 years old. She's been in assisted living for 4 years. My son moved with us about 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, and took care of him. He was in a very deep, dark depression. We were scared he was going to commit suicide after a very contentious divorce. He is an abuse survivor, and he had a hard time trying to convince the system that he was the one being abused. And then later his 10 children, he got custody of all 10 of his children. They all moved in with us. And all of the children, every one of the children had various stages of depression. We had 2 attempt suicide, and they are much better now, but they're still, most of them are still in counseling. Our son has since remarried, praise God, and he's 45 now and has remarried. Our 10 grandchildren are much better. They range in age from, at the time, from 4 to 16. Now it's, I think, 9 to 22. I'm trying to get those ages right, something like that. And one aspect of caregiving that has not been addressed is the one in which I have found myself, and that is being a caregiver for your abuser. This is a unique situation, and there is not a lot of information available for the caregiver who finds themselves in this paradoxical dilemma. It is quite stressful being an abuse survivor and then having to provide adequate care for the person who abused you, and at the same time at risk of further abuse. I prefer not to say who my abuser has been. However, as a result of the stress, I have started treatment by a therapist specializing in abuse. It's been very helpful, painful on another note, but it's been very helpful. And I would advise you, if you have not already as a caregiver, to take advantage of the service of therapy. It is so, so important. We have got to take care of ourselves. I find myself, I've been taking my husband, bless his heart, when I was taking him for his therapy for his arm, and I took him to the doctor so many times, I forgot that I hadn't been to the doctor. So I wasn't getting my dental. I would go to get my dental checkup. Miss Conway, you haven't been here in 3.5 years. What? But I was, well, Mr. Conway, he's been in every 6 months. or me going to get my breast exam. Miss Conway, you haven't had a mammogram in 2.5 years. No, but I've been taking him. I even got him a mammogram because he had a lump from where the one of the tubes was in his side, and it made a lump in his breast. And I took him to get a mammogram, but I didn't get one myself. So we have got to take care of ourselves so that we don't end up passing away before our loved one does, and they're not going to get the care that we would love to give them. Distance caregiving during a pandemic, being a long distance caregiver adds an entirely different stressor. My long distance caregiving has become much like everyone else's caregiving, despite the distance due to COVID. We have all become long distance caregivers, not being able to touch and visit our loved ones, except I'm 1,200 miles away. Neither of us has been able to visit our loved ones or been able to see them in person to check for signs of neglect or abuse, even though my sister only lives 30 minutes away. Before I left in November, I was able to visit our mother once a week. We were gone every day if we could have. And there were times when we would say, well, take off your sock, because we couldn't touch her. So we said, Mommy, take off your socks so we can see your ankles, so we can see your feet, you know, and all that. But we're outside doing this. And because she complained about a sore spot in her, she said, my behind hurts right in the crack. And because I had been caregiver for my husband, I realized that she was probably getting a bed sore. And so this is something that should have been looked at by the staff. This is an excellent place where she is, excellent. But if I don't care how good a school is, I was an educator for 33 years. I don't care how good the school is. If you are not on it, there are teachers in that school who are not doing a job. And unless you speak up, your child is going to fall in the cracks. And you're saying with your parent, if you have them in assisted living, I don't care how good it is, you've got to speak up. And so we had them go while we were holding on the phone, strip her down. You check her right now for bed sores, because in assisted living, if they get a bed sore while they're there, they will keep them. But if they come back from a hospital, they won't take them with the bed sore, even if they were the ones that caused it. So we had them strapped down. Sure enough, in the crack of her behind, excuse me for being a little graphic, but she had a bed sore that had developed. And they should have seen that. They should have checked it. She sits all day in a chair or a wheelchair, or she's in the bed. They should have checked that, and they didn't. And my sister and I are I'm not saying avid letter writers, we are rabid letter writers, and we got on them. And when you put it in writing, it's all right to call them and put them on point. But if you put it in writing, you got a record, and you can go back by yourself or with a lawyer saying, you knew because I told you this, that on this day, and this is your response. My sister keeps everything. If it's on a piece of toilet paper, my sister keeps it. So we keep everything. So you got to put them on point. We are a really good team. My sister and I have been able to synchronize our caregiving duties to the point that we are more like a finely rehearsed waltz. Each of us has our own duties, and we do them relatively well. We each readily say, oh, in addition, we have given each other the freedom to make mistakes without blame. We each readily say no fault when we find ourselves blaming ourselves or apologizing for something we forgot, messed up, or just didn't do. We each know our own and each other's strengths and weaknesses, and readily call upon each other or reach out to one another when or if sometimes we ask for assistance. And we have enlisted help of other relatives, and it just was an option. This is what you're gonna do. And we have asked help to take our mother for doctor's appointments, to dentist appointments, beauty shop appointments, manicure appointments, because we could do all that. But I'm 74 years old. My sister is 69. We can't do all that and still be healthy. And I'm a full-time caregiver for my husband. He can do a lot, but if you ever tie your hand behind your back, and he was left-handed, and his left arm is the one that was cut off. And so I have to help him with everything. And so that's what I must put my husband first. And I'm very religious. My husband comes first for anybody else. then myself, and then my family. If I don't take care of my husband, who's going to take care of him? If I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of him. I can't take care of my parents. I can't help my grandkids, my children. So our health is paramount. I know that when we don't reach out, we start to feel that isolation. And some of us have done that caregiver dance for so long and by ourselves that we forget that we are indeed caregivers. And it wasn't until Keisha asked me to take part in this that I actually looked back to see how long I've been in this caregiver concert. I had forgotten all the people I had been a caregiver for, and that I really hadn't thought about me being caregiver for all those kids that I had in my house. I was 69 years old when they moved in with us, or 68. And it was 12 of us in that house. And I don't know how in the world we did it. 13 of us. And I had to cook dinner for everybody because they didn't cook dinner. My son couldn't do it. My husband couldn't do it. So I was the one who made all of the meals, 2-3 meals a day, every day. And I learned how to cook ahead. So reach out. Someone will have the answer to your problem. If you're sitting in there stewing in your own misery by yourself, you're going to end up burning yourself up or stew until the flesh falls off the bones. Reach out. Elaine, girl, reach out to me. I have a network of about 4 or 5 other caregivers that they're just getting into this. And they reach out to me. I said, reach out to me because it gives me a chance to unload my stuff. And when I start telling about all the stuff I had, all of a sudden, you know what? Maybe it's not quite so bad. So when I listen to you, Elaine, with your mother in your house, maybe it's not quite so bad. So, you really reach out and reach out to me. You can get in touch with me. Keisha will tell you how to get in touch with me, and I will be glad. And I'm not just saying that just to say that. Reach out. If you don't reach out, that's on you. I'm old and I might forget to reach out. So you need to reach out to me, okay? And I think I'm just about done. Is that it? Yes. Thank you so much, Keisha, for inviting me. And I remember it was so stressful. I don't know, Elaine, if you understand. You find yourself being forgetful, and one more thing on my plate, it's like having a platter and you got all this stuff on it, and they see you with this stuff, and because you got a platter, they think you have more stuff on it. And here I got this, and somebody put some more stuff, and stuff is falling on the floor. I said, well, I'll get that later. Well, shoot, I'll forget it's on the floor. So I thank you, Keisha, and I remember it was very stressful remembering, but I'm glad I'm here to share a little bit.
Miss Sharon, it was great. I appreciate it. I definitely thank you. I can't thank you enough for doing this for me. And you gave us some great tips and pointers. And if you look in the chat box, you can see that people were chiming in everything that you said. So, that emotional aspect and the guilt that you talked about, it was good to hear, because actually our next speaker, who is Miss Janice Petty, and I'm going to highlight Miss Petty. She's going to talk about some of that. So Miss Petty, I am going to spotlight you right now. And so our next panelist is Miss Janice Petty. She's a licensed professional counselor and a licensed substance abuse treatment provider with over 20 years of experience providing clinical mental health treatment services. Janice is known for journeying through the peaks and valleys with her clients by providing a safe and comfortable environment that is conducive to sheer transparency and healing. As a speaker, facilitator, trainer, and administrator, her mission is to educate and dispel the myths associated with mental health disorders. She empowers groups, families, and individuals to move beyond pain to peace through counseling and coaching by utilizing various treatment options and approaches. So, Ms. Petty, please take it away.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am super excited to be able to join you all. Miss Sharon has said it all, coupled with Elaine and Dr. Green. I don't know what else to say, but I'm going to wrap it all up, and hopefully you'll be able to learn something from what I'm saying today. As you are aware, we are living in challenging times. This ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has put pressure on all of us. Amongst those affected since the start of that pandemic is one incredible group. That's you. Yes, you as the caregivers. You are the unsung heroes that care for your loved ones day in and day out, or you are that employee that goes to the home of those others. Keisha, if you would, can I get slide number 1? I want to share with you some information from AARP. It reports that an increase of caregivers from 18% in 2015 to, imagine this, 21% in 2020. I'm gonna give her a minute. That means there was a rise from 43.5 million in 2015 to 53 million in 2020. It also reports that 24% of caregivers are caring for more than one person. Miss Sharon mentioned there were 13 people in that house at one time. And then there are 21%, catch this, Miss Sharon, of caregivers who indicate that they're in poor health. No, they didn't go to those doctor's appointments. Caregivers face a great challenge on a day-to-day basis. Thank you, Keisha. You wear a plethora of hats and you have many roles, coupled with the already familiar task of providing that physical care. Keeping track, giving and keeping track of the medications, coordinating the appointments, and then you have to go to the appointments. You need to remember to ask your questions. Yes, you have to make those legal and financial decisions. And don't forget, you also have to inform other family members. Your list of daily tasks can go on and on and on. The onset of this pandemic has made the role of caregivers complex, and it has brought a whole new level of stresses. You are now stressed with the burden and the measures of preventing the COVID-19 spread. You have to wear your mask and hope that your family recognizes you. Remember, you got to also hope that they understand what you're saying. You have to disinfect everything from the countertops to the food packages, and yes, even sometimes those people that come into your home. You have to quarantine. You have to social distance. You can't hug as often as you like. You have to learn new technology. All of us now know what Zoom is. Somebody may have even told you, hey, you're still on mute. You have to be the sergeant at arms of your own home, being careful of those who come and go in your home. And yes, you have to have those telemedicine visits. Can you imagine that? You're meeting your provider from the comfort of your own home through a video. What a time this pandemic has been for us. Despite your critical role, caregivers access practical social, emotional, and financial support. As a result of this deficit, 1 in 4 of you have reported caregivers suffer a great deal from increased stress, burnout, isolation, and depression, all because of this pandemic. So during my brief time today, I want to talk about you taking care of you taking care of you emotionally. And as a caregiver, you probably heard so many times, oh, you're so strong. You are resilient. But does that mean you can't suffer from mental burnout and exhaustion? Absolutely not. Caregiver stress syndrome is a condition where a person suffers from taking care of others in lieu of taking care of themselves. Can you imagine? You are mentally, emotionally, physically tired and drained. Caregivers naturally focus on someone else and make themselves secondary. Have you considered this? If something happens to you, what is plan B? If something happens to you, who's going to step up and take care of your loved one? If something happens to you, what are the next steps? So this means one simple thing that is hard to do. You must, yes, you must take care of yourself. I know. Yes, I know, Elaine, easier said than done. So let me ask you this. I'm ready for slide number 2, Keisha. Are you suffering from burnout? Are you burned out? Here's a couple questions I want to ask you. Have there been an extended period of time when you were simply exhausted, having little to no interest in doing things? Are you burned out? So let me do this while she gets the questions up. She got them. Take a minute and look at them. Select all that apply to you. I'm going to give you a minute or two to read them over and select. Are you burned out? Neglecting your own physical and emotional needs. Depressed mood or mood swings. Feeling like caregiving is controlling your life. You have become unusually impatient, anxious about the future. Inability to remember pertinent information. So if you be honest, let's talk about some of the characteristics of caregiving burnout. The first one I want to talk about, if this is you, give me a 1 in the chat. Give me a 1 in the chat if you can relate. Have you neglected your own physical and emotional needs? I know I got 1 in the chat, Miss Sharon. Have you neglected your own physical and emotional needs? Oh, y'all coming on through there. Come on. One sign of burnout, when you are a caretaker, you begin to neglect your own physical and emotional needs. Yes, it's important to care for yourself physically, but let me tell you, it's equally important to care for yourself emotionally. As a caretaker, you can experience a number of feelings, both good and bad. We've heard today that these feelings can range from anger. Anger because I don't have anybody here to support me. Anger, Elaine, because I'm doing this on my own. Angry because maybe I didn't make the best situation. Angry because I'm just frustrated day in and day out. Have any of you been jealous? You've heard it. I'm living my best life. But that may not be you today. Are you jealous because everybody else is living their best life and you feel that life is passing you by? Well, are some of you depressed? You have given up so many things to be a caretaker. And it seems like every day seems like the same. Nothing to look forward to. Depression has taken control. Give me a 1 in that chat if you found yourself frustrated. I don't have to give you examples. You can be frustrated by a number of things on any given day. And you also may find yourself frustrated day in and day out. Another characteristic of burnout is depression and mood swings. Are you experiencing those signs of tearfulness, sadness, hopelessness, fatigue, or lacking energy? Not having anything to look forward to, and each day seems like the same. Today seems like yesterday, and a new week seems like last week. Every day is the same. One moment you're happy and you're laughing, and the next moment you're crying. Those mood swings. Have you experienced feeling like caregiving has controlled your life? Difficulty coping with everything every day, or the lack of motivation? As I've already said, not motivated to do anything, not feeling like caregiving has taken over every aspect of your life. You seem not to be motivated to do anything, and you find little joy and little pleasure in those simple things that used to make you laugh and smile. Let me know If you become unusually impatient, irritable, argumentative, not only with the person that you're caring for, but with other people as well. Does every day seem like a fight? There's no peace at home, and then there's no peace at work. But wait a minute, the common denominator is you. What about being anxious for the future? You find it difficult to control your worry, worrying about what the future holds, worrying about how things will work out. This excessive worry can lead you to fatigue, difficulty concentrating, irritability, and even muscle tension. I'm worried about what tomorrow may hold, or better yet, I'm worried about what the next moment or the next hour holds. And then we go into those cognitive problems. Inability to concentrate and remember information. Because you're so tired, you're depressed, or you're anxious. No, it's more than I went in this room and I forgot what I came for. It's more than I went to the grocery store and I forgot that one special item. It's beyond that. You're forgetting pertinent information. So I asked you to reply on the chat for a number of reasons. Number one, I wanted you to see that you're not alone. There are other people who are suffering from the same characteristics. Number two, there's some burnout happening. And number three, to help you see where you may be. If you are able to see 3 or more of these, then you're in burnout or headed for burnout. Let's look at the results. 68% of you say you're neglecting your own physical or emotional needs. 47 says, I'm in a depressed mood or mood swings. Then the 26%, the third one says, feeling like caretaking has controlled my life. But wait a minute, before that, a lot of you have mentioned that I've become unusually impatient, or I can't remember pertinent information, or I'm anxious about the future. So now that I've given you all of this and we see where everybody anonymously ranks, let me help you out. We know that caretaking is emotionally exhausting. We know that caretaking can lead to burnout. I want to tell you one thing that you need to do. It's only 4 letters. It's a sign that we see quite often. It's simple as the word stop. Stop. S-T-O-P. Stop. Stop. Stop and seek opportunities for support. Oh, I love that thing when Miss Sharon came on through there and told Elaine, call me, but if you don't, it's on you because I told you that. Ask for help. Asking for help or needing help, it doesn't say that you're not a good caretaker. What it says is, I can't do this alone. The challenge of asking for help is 2 things. You got to overcome your pride and you got to overcome the guilt of asking. It's okay to ask for help. You are a loving and caring human being with strengths, but you also have limitations. Pushing yourself to the brink of burnout is dangerous. It's not only dangerous for you, but it's dangerous for those around you. So I challenge you today. Yes, Elaine, to pick up the phone and contact Miss Sharon. I challenge everybody else to make that list of that village of those who can help you. Not only make a list, but call them. If you don't have a list of resources, oh, I liked it when Dr. Ebony came right on through and gave you a list of resources. Find that list of resources and reach out to them. They're willing, able, and available to help you. I need you to go ahead and stop. Stop and take time to do things you enjoy. Give yourself something to look forward to. Plan a break. As often as you can schedule a getaway, schedule it. I understand we're in a pandemic. That getaway may simply mean going into your bedroom, closing that door, and putting a sign on the door. Y'all know what the sign at the hotel says. Do not disturb. Or better yet, go to that hotel and enjoy a quiet evening. Learn to relax, light a candle, put on your favorite show, enjoy your favorite movie, take a virtual vacation, and you will have the best seat in the house. Read a good book. Engage with friends and family through social media or FaceTime. Additionally, what I need you to do is don't skip out on those doctor's appointments. Yes, Miss Conway, you need to not be so busy that you can't go to your appointment. You too need to exercise, eat well, get enough sleep, and for some of you, take your medication properly. You got to stop, caretaker. You need to stop and learn to say yes to opportunities that are offered. Make a list of those daily tasks that you need to do, but after you make that list, designate somebody else to do them. Have y'all been at that job where they said all other duties as assigned? Those weren't your duties, but they assigned them to you today. And guess what? It belongs to you. Please be patient. Have somebody come over, cook that dinner. I can't cook as well as my sister, but I can cook something. Have somebody come and do laundry. Have somebody sit with your loved one or run errands. Be patient with yourself. If everything on your list you didn't get to today, it's okay. Get to it another day. And here's my favorite. It's been mentioned many times before. Join a support group. Join a support group because it gives you a couple of options. One, you get to communicate with people who have some of the same situations and events as you. You get to alleviate those bottled up feelings that are going on. And you get to recognize you are not alone. Another thing I'm going to recommend is that you take time to journal. You don't have to have a cute journal or a fancy pen. It may simply be a piece of notebook paper. Back in the day, they had a brown paper bag. Some of you may still have one of those. Write on back of a bag or a napkin. Journal your feelings. Today, my journal may read, I am so frustrated. Tomorrow, it may say, today was a good day because. But whatever your journal says, remember that these are your feelings, and your feelings are valid. I need you to stop. Stop and prioritize your needs. This is the easiest place to start, by prioritizing your needs. That simply means me time. We've said that before, but do you take that me time? Take time to care for yourself emotionally. It can be as simple as starting by organizing and structuring your day. Get up 15 minutes early and use that time just to sit with your coffee or your tea and your journal. Take time for prayer and meditation. Take time to exercise, or take 5 more minutes in that hot shower. Do whatever you choose to do, but whatever it is, allow yourself to focus on you. We know that being a caregiver can place you on a roller coaster of emotions. All of your emotions, yes, negative or positive, are valid, and your emotions are important. Keisha, if you would, poll question number 2. Poll question number 2. I want to ask this group of caretakers, do you know what the most common thread is? It's guilt. It's guilt. I've heard it. You've heard it. Guilt. So my question to you today is, how do you deal with guilt? Answer this if you would. Do you simply ignore it? Do you talk to people I trust? Yes, that may be your therapist. Do you replace that negative self-talk with some self-compassion? No, I will not blame somebody else. Yes, today I did the best that I could. Or do you constantly beat up on yourself? How do you address your guilt? Caregivers tend to feel guilty about a number of things. And it's impossible to be in perfect control of how you always feel. But it's important to know how you are feeling. So here are a number of things that caregivers feel guilty about. Caregivers tend to feel guilty about having the demand of work, family, and everything else in life, and having a balancing act. I'm not a magician. How do I do this? This may leave little time to spend with your loved one. So here's an option. Consider setting a schedule of an allotted time to spend with your loved one. Make sure this time is meaningful by solely spending this time with your loved one over dinner, playing a game, watching a TV show, and enjoying a conversation. Make sure that this practice is consistent to you and anybody else that choose to participate. Because what this does is it gives both you and the caregiver and your person you're caring for something to look forward to. Let me know, put me a 1 in the chat. Have you felt guilty about losing your patience? Have you felt guilty about losing your patience? Our patience typically wear thin because we're tired and worn out. If you feel like you're reaching the end of your rope, I can't tie another knot and hold on. This is the perfect opportunity for you to go to that stop sign and stop because you need a break. Put your energy into taking time for a break rather than dwelling on how guilty you are. Here's the big one. Do you feel guilty because you don't take time for yourself? I feel guilty when I take time for myself. Let me tell you, putting another person's needs before your own, yes, it is a sign of love and devotion. You may feel that you need to devote all of your time to your loved one as they did you. And I'm here to tell you that's commendable. But I'm also here to tell you, you cannot ignore your needs. We all carry around shoulds. No one can do a great of a job as I can, so I should not go and take a break. What if something happens? I'll never forgive myself, so I just should stay at home. So as caregivers, we tend to carry around the burden and feeling guilty of not caring for yourself because I'm not going to take a break, because what if something should happen? The shoulds, the ifs, the what ifs, but what if it doesn't? You've heard it before, and we all know, before you place the oxygen mask on somebody else, you got to first place it on yourself. The only way to sustain the love and the care to give your loved one and give them the love they deserve is that you must first care for yourself. This means eating healthy, getting enough rest, attending to your needs, and taking time for yourself. Failure to care for yourself is a breeding ground for bitterness, resentment, and anger. Miss Conway, if I was in that Baptist church, I would get an amen and somebody would tell the minister, say it again. So I'm going to tell you, failure to care for yourself can become a breeding ground for bitterness, resentment, and anger. Somebody said amen. Lastly, I want to touch on the guilt of placing your loved one in a nursing home or respite care it can be overwhelming. Ms. Hardy already spoke on that. She shared with us her guilt of having to do that. I've just built this new house. My mother can't work anymore. She had a number of things that she said I had to struggle with. Of course, this may not have been her plan. And sometimes in the Black community, this is not what we signed up for. We're going to take care of our parents and our loved ones. But I encourage you to focus on the positive aspects of it all. Your loved one may have that 24 hours of assisted living and physical care. They may have that active environment and social environment. Let me share with you, growing up in South Carolina, my mother became ill and my sister was her primary caregiver. But I would go home and my mother would look so forward to going to the senior center. Oh, she would get up early. She would get dressed. She would have her bag and she would stand by the door waiting for that van to come. Now, let me tell y'all, in that bag, she had a couple of dollars, a crossword puzzle book, and a pencil. And Lord, if they were going on a field trip, you know, to the nursery, to the movies, or just somewhere special, we heard about it for days. And not only that, we heard about it when she came back. I love to hear about those social activities that she engaged in. It meant at that time, we heard it as like, mama gonna stop talking, but it meant so much to her. So it's okay to allow them to be in a place where they can engage socially with others. They will also receive in respite care or in those nursing homes, specialized healthcare, the safety, and it relieves the family member of the burden and the challenge of how to care for your family member. Above all, if you don't remember anything else, hear me say, you cannot be an effective caregiver if you don't care for yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically. It has certainly been a sheer pleasure for me to join you today. And I hope that you were able to learn something from our time spent. And whatever you heard will enhance your skills as a caregiver. I want to tell you, my name is Janice Petty. I'm a licensed therapist. If you need help with understanding more about caregiving, or if you need some information, please reach out to me. And as always, I wish you nothing but the very best. Thank you.
Janice, we greatly appreciate that. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And all of the panelists, you all were absolutely wonderful, and could not have done this without you today. So I wanted to take a few minutes because Dr. Green, Elaine, Sharon, and Janice have shared some wonderful information with us, have given us some wonderful insight. And so I wanted to provide an opportunity if anyone on the call or anyone on the webinar has any questions for them, for each of these ladies, if you would just type in the chat box as we've been doing, what questions you have, and I will give them the floor to be able to speak. But could you please go ahead and type any questions in the chat box for me? Let's see, I have Lauren and Angie helping me field the questions here. So do we have any questions, lady? And Ocean?
I see a specific asked about suggestions for caregiving assistants in Prince George's County or Waldorf.
Okay, I think I'm going to feel that, which I know that Dr. Green is not from this area, but Dr. Green, I am going to spotlight you for a moment just to see if you have any feedback on how an individual might be able to find resources in their area. Dr. Green, there you go.
Yeah, so there are a few national organizations, and I would say the Caregiver Action Network is one, and this is for specifically for caregivers. You can also go to our website, caregiversupportservices.com, and we are a nonprofit, but the more popular web link is .com. And then I would look at a couple of the National Alliance for Caregiving, of course, because they also have coalitions. And then the other would be National Family Caregiver Alliance. So the wording is a little bit different. They have a map on their website that has, if you click on your state, you'll be able to identify different resources and organizations for your state, and then you would be able to find the resources for your county. So National Family Caregiver Alliance would be one where you might be able to really hone in on where you could find resources.
And Ms. Sharon, you can go ahead.
When I started looking for help for caregiving, excuse me, I went to a place for mom and Caregiver. You see it on TV sometimes advertised, and they are actually a clearinghouse. They don't provide the care, but they give you options. You tell them your needs. You want in-home care, part-time care, a little like that, and they will actually give you different options. And it's up to you. They will even make the appointments for you to go see these places. And that's what we did. We told them where we lived, what we wanted, how much we could afford, and they led us to these places. Also, when you contact these places, many times they're a source of information, because first thing we say is, it's going to cost me. Right now, our mother, for her care, she has a high level of care. Like it goes from like 1 to 10 or someone, and she's on like level 4 or 5. And her care right now is about $6,000 a month, $6,000 to $7,000 a month. Now, her husband was a veteran. So if you are caring for a veteran or the spouse of a veteran, there's care there. If you also, if they're on Medicare, Medicaid, you can contact them, because ironically, the poorer you are, the more help there is for you, because they know you can't pay, and the government actually subsidizes a lot of care. Sometimes in-home care might be a better option for you, especially if you feel that you want to keep them at home. And there are some of these caregiving agencies, the one I'm using, and I'm talking off the top of an old head. So if you want more information, you can contact me. I will put my contact information in there, and I'll be glad, because I'm sitting down here in Florida in the heat, just saying. And I'll be glad to give you any help anytime you want. My man, he can help himself every now and then. All I got to do is put it on the stove. He can feed himself. So I'll be glad to help you. I really would. And again, I have offered this help, and y'all don't contact me. It's on you, okay? Because I'm not going to remember. As soon as this thing click off, I'm going to go and do what I got to do. Look at TV, play solitaire, whatever it is. So, but those things like that. And there are actually agencies and in your county, social services, contact them, and they can give you contact information. And just keep in mind that all caregiving is not equal. No matter how good it is, just because you pay through the roof for it does not mean it's the best. You have got to do your homework, and I can lean you towards the agency. I mean the caregiving agency we use for in-home care for my father. And I can also tell you, we used the Charleston and Waldorf, and there are other places that you could go to, and we kept them on point. But also, I'm not trying to be racist right now, but we have found that the best caregivers are Nigerian, just saying. So, because they revere, you're looking for somebody who reveres old folks in their culture, okay? And so don't you want to get no Scandinavians, because they just sit old folks to the side. They like youth and all that stuff. So yeah, the Nigerians on point. So that's what I that's just from our experience. I can't say that's all the time. We be honest here. So I just want to, so if there's any Nigerians on there, hey. So I just want to tell y'all. Okay, but contact me. I'll put my contact information in the bottom.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon. Lauren or Ocean or Angie, do you see any other questions?
Yeah, we did have two other questions. So one, they're somewhat related perhaps, and one is directly to Ms. Petty asking, it says some may not know how to ask for professional help when experiencing stress, but they still have to go on. Could you give us 2 tips on how to do that? So asking for professional help. And then a sort of related question for all the panelists is, any tips, we all need this, any tips on how to handle difficult family dynamics and expectations?
So, Lauren, thank you for sharing that question. One of the most important things that I take away from that is you recognize that you need help. Recognizing that you need help. And when you recognize that you're needing help, if you move beyond that guilt and the pride of asking for help, the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is reach out to find one, you may want to look for a caregiver, someone else who's doing the same thing that you're doing. The other thing is, it may be that I'm looking for professional help. I'm looking for a therapist. There are a number of places. I happen to attend a large church that has a ministry there that are filled with therapists. You may look on a site such as Psychology Today. When you look at Psychology Today, it tells you to put in your where you live and your zip code. Now, I must tell you that a lot of therapy sessions today are virtual, just as doctor's appointments, which is good and bad. You're doing it from the comfort of your own home. And it is a safe place for you to share information. It is a confidential place. Your tea not gonna be in the street. So that may be an option. If you reach out to me, if you need help locating how to find a therapist and what to look for in a therapist, I'll be happy to give you that information, some tips, because some people may not have sought therapy before. What do I expect? So if you recognize that you need help, before you get to the point of burnout, before you get to the point of being overwhelmingly stressed, seek help. Seek help. I also want to say one other thing. It just came to my mind. A lot of doctors' offices now are doing what is called integrated therapy. There are therapists that sit in your doctor's office and you may not even know about it. So when you go to the doctor's office and your blood pressure is through the roof or your cholesterol, hey, can you refer me to a therapist? We have several therapists that are located in doctor's office that can schedule appointments for you. I hope that's beneficial for whomever needs that.
And Elaine, you were gonna tackle the handling the family dynamics. So go for it, please, ma'am.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, prior to me becoming a full-blown caregiver, I did run an Alzheimer's day treatment program in Washington, D.C. And I did also facilitate a support group, self-help support group for caregivers. And family dynamics was always the key thing that came up in our support groups because and also in servicing our clients and their family members, they had several, maybe brothers and sisters. I mentioned in my story that my mom took care, she did co-caregiving with her siblings. It was 13 of them. They had a wonderful situation. They all worked it out. They all took a vacation month and went to Wilmington, North Carolina, where my grandmother lived, and took care of her. And it was just, from the outside looking in, meaning all of us, the kids, we all looked at it and was like, oh, that's so great. Of course, I didn't have that option, but being around other people and seeing a lot of the family dynamics, as this person mentioned, they can be pretty complex. And what we used to say is accept the help that you have. Because what I found with family members so often, they came in and they would come in my office and complain and whine and cry, you know, I got 6 brothers and 4 sisters and nobody does anything but me. I'm sorry, there's always going to be a primary caregiver. So, you know, you will not have that perfect family like I think we may have had. I really don't know all of the dynamics that went on with my mom and her siblings, but I do know that whenever one called and said, I gotta go, can you come and relieve me? They did that. And I thought it was just a well-oiled machine. But if you do not have that, accept the help that you do have and categorize the help that you need from each of your family members. Ask them, you know, if there's one that particularly will like to take the mom or dad to the store or to the doctor's appointments or whatever, utilize them for what they can do, and don't allow yourself to get caught up in the why don't I have more help from this and that person. My mom had sisters, obviously, and I saw her sacrifice a lot for them in my lifetime and in the time that I had her here, and they all live within maybe 20 minutes proximity of my home. They never offered to come and take care of her. One was a nurse. And I thought that was just so cruel. You know, they would go on trips. They still do. They travel, they go on cruises, they do everything. And no one ever thought to ask me for help. But I did ask them for help a couple of times. And sometimes I wouldn't give them an option. I'm like, my husband and I have to go this place. Mom doesn't have anyone to care for her. I'll bring her over your house at such and such time, you know, and I just had to let them know I'm at my wit's end and I can't do it. I need this help. So, you know, that's, if anyone else wants to jump in, but that's my advice on it. Categorize what they can do for you, accept the help that you can, and, you know, move on.
I have a little to add to that, and
Sure.
I totally agree. We have a questionnaire on our site where you identify your spiritual gifts related to caregiving. And if you can have that family meeting up front, you know, like the crisis situation happened, and then you can have everyone answer those questions, then you can say, hey, you're really good at meal preparation, or you enjoy that. That's a spiritual gift that you have. And it kind of locks your family members into doing something, anything, and being involved, because everyone's not going to be able to do the things as far as like having the doctor's conversations. I'm a nurse, so I don't mind doing personal cares. My husband wouldn't be inclined to do that. So just identifying those things where the person is not necessarily having to be taken out of their comfort zone to provide care can be really helpful. And then doing it right when a situation occurs, so that you don't get months and months in and now you're all the way burned out, as Miss Petty was saying, and then, you know, now you want to just drop someone off at a long-term care facility or something along those lines. So I just wanted to piggyback off of that, what Elaine was saying.
And Dr. Green, you mentioned your the website. Could you place your website and information in the chat so we might be able to go and find that tool that you was just speaking of?
Yeah, and it's on the 4 steps. So if you I'll put the link in there, but it's on the 4 steps, and you can just download the questionnaire, and it could be very helpful for you getting organized.
Thank you. Ms. Lauren, are there any more questions? I know we're at our time, but if there are any more questions that we can address, I would like to do that. Lauren or Ocean, do you see anything else?
I don't see any additional questions. I see several speakers very helpfully put their contact information in the chat for folks if they want to record to be able to reach out. I know a lot of people have been saying if you don't ask for help, it's on you now. So we have contact information, and I think, Ocean, if you could drop our link into the chat as well, that'd be great. But otherwise, I think that we are good on questions for now.
Okay. Well, prior to ending our session, and I thank you all for engaging in these polls today. This might be different for some of you on the call, but thank you for trying. So I do have a last poll because we at NCBA, along with the Diverse Caregivers Alliance and the National Alliance for Caregiving, we want to know if you enjoyed this session today. So I am going to launch our final poll here just to get some feedback about how useful the session was. So I'm going to launch that, and I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to respond. And then prior to ending our session, I would invite Angie or Lauren to just say some comments if they have them. But go ahead for me, and I'm going to give you all about a minute here to answer these. It looks like I have 3 questions here, but please let us know if this was useful because we look forward to doing more of these sessions in the future. So I'll give you all about a minute.
I'll just sneak in real quick while everyone's answering, but huge thank you to NCBA for just selecting such incredible speakers. We've been hosting these sessions around the country for with different organizations or different groups of folks, and this was so helpful. I loved all the messages of self-care, how important it is, destigmatizing therapy, which we all need. And just for everyone who had their own personal experience around caregiving, it means so much to hear from people who actually are caregivers and who really know what it's like and what folks are going through. So just a huge thank you. And as Keisha mentioned, we're hoping to put on another one of these webinars as resources for caregivers sometime in the summer. And, just really looking forward to keeping in touch with you all. And thanks everyone for answering the polls and helping us learn about you and what you need.
Thank you, Lauren. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. You have my heart. If there's anything that we can do here at NCBA, please reach out to us. We've been taught to reach out, so that's what we will do. And to everyone who attended today, thank you. We hope that you were able to, in fact, we know that you took away some wonderful, wonderful best practices to move forward with your emotional well-being and in your caregiving journey. To Keisha, thank you so much. You know how I feel. To Ms. Tellersford, thank you so much. And to Syed for supporting us with our technical successes, no challenges, and to Lauren and Ocean, our partners at the Diverse Elders Coalition. Thank you.
So now everyone, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll that's here on the screen. And I think I'm gonna just exit out of that. And I think we've reached our point where I can bid everyone a great afternoon. But again, I thought this was wonderful. Thank you all of the panelists that spoke. And as Angie said, thank you to all of our partners. I couldn't have asked for a better group of people today. So everyone have a great afternoon, and stay tuned for what NCBA has to offer and what the Diverse Elders Coalition has to offer. And we'll be in touch soon. So have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.